Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Everyone.
Good morning. Give people a few more minutes to join in.
Yeah.
Haven't seen anything from Steve lately, so does that mean he's still sailing up to Alaska?
Yeah, I think he said 2 weeks at some point.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. His CNCF status says on vacation. So I don't think Pritesh will be joining in. I can cover the first topic. We'll wait for another minute or so.
Sure. And so we're going back into the signature formats HackMD first. Is that the plan?
Yeah, it's mainly status updates.
Okay.
Don't have anything specific to review. We looked at that last week.
Okay. And I know I had thrown some stuff in the Slack, so we can chat about that too. Give people
Cool.
a minute to pull that one up and also to go into the first HackMD and sign yourself in over there. Hey, we even got Shiwi to come in this late hour. I think that's 5 minutes after. So Melinda, if you want to go ahead and pick it up, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll start. It's mainly status updates. So on the signature format, we've been having like internally spending time, more time reviewing the signature formats. So we haven't still made a determination on the format. We'll finalize. I think Dizzy works conceptually. Um, if we add the timestamp and certificate support, we have opened a couple of, or there has been conversations or issues on the Dizzy repository around supporting those. We were supposed to open a PR for that. That work hasn't happened. Many of us are having like alternate on calls week after week, me and Pritesh. Some of the concerns we have with Dizzy is that, like, from a standardization or a wide usage, for example, it doesn't have a RFC. Where we also looked at Passeto. Passeto has a draft RFC, and that was kind of that's kind of where we are at. And Shiwe has been doing prototype with JWS. I was hoping he would be here to talk about some of it, basically demonstrating that the basic feature set that we want, a payload and specific attributes and X509 certificate support, timestamp. He's been working on that. Other than that, I think Pritesh joined. And is there anything else, Pritesh, that we want to highlight?
Nope.
I'll just have
So
a quick note, kind of
Sure.
semi-related as well. It's I think this will work with any of the formats, but I just was reading the other day about the canonicalization attacks on various signature formats, and I posted a link in the Slack, which I think might just be something for us to consider as we finalize the design. It seems like
Yeah.
it's basically an attack where if you have a variable number of fields and don't specify that, it can mess with the hash function, which again, it's fairly straightforward to fix. You just specify the number of fields, but just something I wanted to throw out into the discussion as we talk
Yeah,
about these.
No, that we actually read about that. Thanks for sharing that on the channel. Me and Pritesh went through it, not with a very fine comb, but we had a quick reading, and it does make sense. Like, as we are planning some of these extensions to Dizzy, if that becomes a part of the pre-authorization encoding or not, I think that's an important discussion to have as we propose anything that changes the spec.
Yeah, very cool. And again, the mitigation is fairly straightforward. I just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, the other thing we are doing kind of internally is taking some of these standards and working with our compliance board or crypto board and getting approvals. So some of this will not be visible as in it's just internal due diligence that we are doing, taking both. I think currently Dizzy and JWS are the ones we are still considering, and we expect at least a few weeks to go by till kind of we get an answer from AWS. I think Microsoft is also evaluating these two and seeing how it plays out. So once there are any specific updates, I'll update on it. I kind of want to, I think other than signature payload, where there are still open items, I think it'd be good to shift focus, and I think we have made not full progress around this. There's a current PR on the signature format that Shiwe has submitted. I think it currently has probably has extended Z as the recommendation. We'd probably take off the recommendation till we have more data here. And I think we should probably revise this PR, just having the comparison of different formats and try to get that in as a in progress work. What do you people think about that?
Yeah, I'm in favor of seeing this get over the GitHub. I do have some concerns. I thrown in the Slack a little bit about things like having the subject manifest over here. It just, I want to understand how you're using that, I guess, before I throw out a complaint. Because my big concern is if I was a user of this, I might pull down the artifact. I might use the subject manifest without ever going through and verifying it. And if I am verifying it, do I need this field over here to do the verification? Or can I just verify from whatever's in that tar, whatever has been signed and pushed over there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so. We have been talking about this, but we haven't had a concrete doc around this area, which is how exactly does the verification process work? Pritesh will start working on that document or a PR for that, which specifically lays out the steps of starting from call to a references API. Given this image hash, give me the references, then how do you narrow down to the signature manifest? How do you correlate the signature blob to a party that you have configured in your trust store? I think there are some unanswered questions there.
Yeah.
Specifically, there are multiple options there, and we need to go through each of them and figure out what works best.
Yep, because whatever is going to read this artifact manifest is going to be parsing the JSON. And so if you parse the JSON and then you have the subject manifest, if you need the subject manifest from this part of the JSON to be able to do the verification in there, what's to say these fields are in the right order? They can be moved around and reordered depending on the implementation. There's a lot of different potential issues where this could become a different field once you re-export it back into a byte array or byte string, that it just won't align with whoever did it first. And so if we've got those issues and the data is already captured within this digest itself, within whatever the packed tar file is or whatever format we put in, then we just don't even need it over here at all. We don't need the subject manifest at that point.
You're talking about the canonicalization of the payload that goes into the, yep.
It gets into a lot of that. And so if you can just avoid that altogether, if it depends on what this thing, we have the signed data, and the signed data is going to have that exact same subject manifest in it. And so if this has been signed and goes through its process, does whatever, are we repeating it a second time to put it up at the top level?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah. So I agree. Some of these aspects need to be covered. What I want to do is maybe update this PR, take off the recommendation. We'll retain the sections which compare the format. There have been a few more updates as we have been looking at these. And on the payload, I still feel there are things to address on the payload. We can keep the current payload examples as illustrative and not final as we work on the details of the payload, and a separate document which covers the verification process. Then there we can talk about all of these details.
Okay. And the one other thing I'll throw out there, I know you were saying DISI is not quite as well used, doesn't have quite the adoption behind it. I do know that Entoto is looking at switching their back into using DISI. And so Entoto fits really nicely with Notary in terms of just workflows. There might be some, efficiency we could gain by using the same format that they're using, potentially.
Okay.
Just something to think about.
Yeah, the only problem is that DC, so right now the argument is that DC by itself shouldn't support things like third chains, but maybe that's why we'll end up with extended DC. So no, let's see.
What was the issue
Yeah,
again?
Oh, the issue. The issue is whether sorry, Millen, let me try summarizing. The issue is that we're not sure whether DC should support things like including X509 style certificate chains. Does that make sense? That's one issue. For
Okay,
one thing.
certificate chains. Yeah, okay. And I don't know if that necessarily needs to be in DISI or if that can be something that we just store external and then that's more work on us, but that's part of the question of where does this make more sense?
Yeah, the concern there was like specifically Notary implementing some kind of extension was there seem to be multiple parties in the issue where this has been tracked. There are multiple folks other than Notary who are interested in the same thing. And there was interest expressed on, can we standardize this? So if it can be like a different version or an extended specification, something that everybody has the same semantics, right? We don't want to define something for X509 and DISI that every application creates differently. I think it's an opportunity for standardization, maybe outside of the base spec. If that is the.
If we're all doing it, it would be nice if it was in DISI, but I would also say that if other people are going to use DISI and we just don't want to use DISI because we would end up doing the same extension other people are doing, I don't know if that's a valid reason not to use DISI.
Yeah, I think that
okay. I was going to say the certificates is kind of adding PKI to the envelope, which is part of the complication basically is that there are different ways to do that PKI, whereas which isn't quite correlated with the use of the envelope format, which is hence the kind of extended proposal.
Yeah, it could also be potentially something that just goes within the object that we're signing, you know, something we put inside the payload that's not part of DISI at all.
Exactly. So because there are multiple ways, we need to remember one thing also. DISI was designed to solve one and only one problem, canonicalization attacks, which the blog post Marina was talking about goes into great detail. If we're adding PKI on top of it, it kind of seems orthogonal to DISI's philosophy, which is why we're thinking about an extension rather than trying to change DISI.
So, I mean, just I kind of have arguments against it. I think some of those are laid out in that issue. Like I specifically don't see much difference between a key ID hint and a X509 hint in DISI. Both of them point to things that are related to a trust store or some configuration outside of it, and the interpretation is totally related to the validation component.
And could the cert chain could the cert chain be the key ID? Like, does that make sense as a use of that field?
I think my personal opinion is it doesn't, because the key ID is unless you are able to disambiguate between that field containing a key ID versus X509 using some additional convention, which makes it, you now have to have some additional qualifier in that attributes content itself. Because now the parser has to figure out, is this a key ID reference or a certificate reference? In terms of like a key ID may just look like a friendly identifier or basically a basic identifier, whereas the X509 certificate will have the like a PEM encoded chain or things like that. Again, that is my view. If folks feel that that is something that can be supported through that format, then that should be workable.
Yeah, I think we should just continue this discussion in that thread too, because I know there are other people also interested in the certificates. So I'd like just make sure there's a way to make this work for everyone.
Yeah, I do want to call out that the certificate and timestamp are kind of more like one aspect of it. We are also looking at the format from a standards and compliance standards, etc. point of view. We haven't gotten data back there yet. Well, once we have some of that, we'll update the document with that. I didn't have anything more to cover on signature format. The next,
I think I can share. Even from Microsoft side, we've kind of reached out to our crypto board. Shui is kind of following up with them. We're looking at a bunch of different requirements internally as well. I wish Ian was here to kind of represent the points, but maybe in a couple of weeks we can summarize and add to this document as we keep going.
Yeah, one other thing I'll add before we jump to the next point is if we're talking about stuff that doesn't fit within, if we package up this and it comes one of these whole media types when you load it in there, and there's other data we want to inject, we can always make another blob. This is an array. So we can have another blob with multiple fields in here, give it different media types. We need to be able to easily separate them or give them annotations. We want to be able to look it up nicely. We can pack this artifact object with as many blobs as we need to pass all the data we need to pass. Sorry,
I didn't get the, what would be an example of that?
If you're thinking, okay, we need to extend, DISI doesn't have a way to pass in the certificate chain, but we could put the certificate chain in a blob. It doesn't need to be, the certificate chain doesn't need to be signed because it is in itself signed data. And so you could just pack that into a blob and ship a second blob in the same artifact that says, okay, here's the blob for the DISI signed data, and here's the blob for our X509 certificate chain. Maybe here's a blob for a timestamp certificate that we got later on. You can pack this with multiple blobs and pass all those up as one artifact that goes with, links up to the image.
I agree. Okay, I get what you're saying. The manifest can support that, but the objection to that was from some component which implements signing that is aware of the underlying certificate and the timestamp. So this works if you call something that generates the signature, and then you call something that puts together the manifest, packs the certificate in that, gets the timestamping signature done, and adds so you kind of assemble these piecemeal, right? It works in that approach. But if you have something like a signing service where the certificate is abstracted from the caller, so you say notary v to sign this particular hash, right? There's no certificate, just a certificate friendly name or some key ID. You reference that. And you also indicated somehow that this is the timestamping server I would prefer. All of these steps of generation of signature happen on the server side, which is where putting them all together in one, basically the knowledge of what the timestamping was or the certificate chain was may not be there on the client or some component who puts the signature manifest together. We can, I think there are gaps in this discussion too. I think part of some of the next steps are the validation, also the signature generation. But that was my main concern around separating it.
Yeah, but keep in mind this artifact is, this is the full text of the artifact right here, and we're even suggesting that maybe we pull out that subject manifest. And so all it is a list of blobs and maybe a couple annotations in there. You can push it up once, that points to your digest that has all the signed data and whatnot in there. And then if you come back to that and say, okay, now we've got the TSA signature, and the TSA signature is going to be on this, probably the digest of the blob or on the subject manifest, something that's in there, not the whole artifact, but just this digest or the component of that digest. You'll have that signature. That could be something you say, okay, let's upload that blob, and now let's upload a new artifact that has 2 blobs in it now. And the registries are designed to handle that.
Sorry. So one of the things that we were discussing why the subject manifest was potentially important was it's outside the scope of the actual signature blob. And if servers are expected to crack open the signature blob to define or identify the subject manifest, the linking has to be, the linking portion would have to know that. So that's why it's outside. But I think it's worth calling out that the trust factor from the registry is an untrustable source. So that field should be omitted for all verification purposes. But definitely when we put the subject manifest, that would be the one that the registry uses to link without having to crack open the blob itself. I think that was one of the main decision points as to why that was there in the field. Just wanted to give some context about that. I don't think we've captured that properly though, which makes sense to write.
Yeah,
in the
no,
document.
that makes sense if it's there for querying and it's just acknowledged that, hey, this is a query field, just like this field down here is just a field for querying, then that can be usable. There's potential that maybe the fields that we want out of this to do the query on, we can just make them annotations though. All right, I don't want to hog up all the time. We got a few other type items in here.
So the
next
item, the next item was really the list of PRs. I wanted to, so these have been, these are basically the hack docs that we reviewed. Doesn't mean that they're all ready to be pushed. They'll need some kind of review again. So I wanted to see how we can streamline this process and like have some process around it, like maybe assigning each one of them to a reviewer for a first pass. That was my suggestion, but I'm open to other. And I think this also maybe a little bit part of the governance discussion on how we get PRs, make progress on PRs.
Yeah, I was about to say it's exactly that. Till we get the governance in there, I don't know what the process is to get these things approved anyway. And so if it's something we can add value and we can do the review, that's great. But I also want to make sure that, you know, we've got a lot of new PRs here and we got a lot of old PRs that have been getting ignored for a long while too.
Yep.
I think in the meantime, we can maybe try and get like, you know, 2 or 3 of the people who are regularly on these calls just to take a look. And then hopefully when the governance is defined, that can help speed it up, whatever the process is.
Yeah, if we can list the older PRs too that haven't got attention, at least if we have a list of kind of PRs critical to making progress, all listed out. And my suggestion was kind of to distribute it among folks for making a first pass and putting in some comments that kind of gets the ball rolling.
I like that idea. Maybe what we could do is work on compiling that list in the HackMD and then, you know, divide that number by the number of people. We each claim that number of ones to take a look at.
Yeah, I have a list in the agenda. There is a list that has Shiva and my PRs.
Oh, perfect. Let's see.
We can extend that. Let me share my screen.
Well, there's 5 of these, and there's more than 5 of us in the call. So if each person claims one, that should get us somewhere.
Yeah, and if any other are missing, let's add them, and then if we can assign folks.
Yeah, Brenda, do you have specific ones that you know of as well?
For some of the older ones, I don't have specifics. I just know that we've got a lot sitting out there that haven't been looked at for a long while. And so I want to make sure that we didn't prioritize the new PRs and keep ignoring the old ones.
Okay, well, we have a couple minutes now. Do you want to try and make a slightly longer list and then just assign them all? Unless we have other things to talk about today that are more important. That's also cool.
Yeah, I mean, assigning makes sense. I just want to make sure that we get some value out of that. You know, that kind of goes back to the governance question of if we sign it, someone says it's good, will it make a difference going in the future?
Is there any we want to highlight from here? The issues open.
Are we thinking issues or are we
tag
thinking
signing.
probably pull request?
Oh, sorry, yes, PR.
Got a couple older
think
ones
some of
there
these-
for the tax scenarios. Go ahead.
I think some of these earlier ones should be pretty straightforward to either merge or just reject, because I think that we've changed the design of the repo a bit since these earlier ones.
Yeah, for example, the 41 there, I know that if that is something we want to think about and move forward, it's going to need some work. It's been too long since we touched it. And I know there are a bunch of issues out there, but it's just because we don't know how we're getting these things approved, it didn't make sense to put the work into it yet.
Yeah. And then that very first one on the list, the initial design options, I think those were ideas that we've kind of used, but I don't know if we need the PR still.
Okay, so there's
So I-
also some cleanup required in terms of
Yeah.
either moving to conversation or closing some of these.
Maybe,
What about
okay.
this one?
I think attacker goals, I think that one I just recently updated. It should be, I think, ready to go. We've had some discussions. I mean, review obviously, but. And it's taken over from another PR that has more discussion. But I think I've resolved the discussion, so.
So this is still a valid one to review?
Yeah.
Okay.
That one's probably ready for review.
Okay, just we can add more, but while we have this small list here, any others that need to be picked up? I know that Niaz's key management ones. I think there's a
Yeah,
version
there's
that
two
was
different
pushed
key
in.
management ones, because he has one and I have one. I don't remember the difference between them off the top of my head. So maybe someone could take both of those and figure out some combination of them to merge.
I know that this one is the older version and a updated one. I think probably got pushed in. That I can have a look at that.
I also put the governance on the list, not the governance from the Notary project. It's over in the update frameworks repo where Justin's been working that one. So that would be a good one for people here to be aware of and look at.
We can talk about the key management one next time. The one Niaz submitted is much more exhaustive, I think, and that along with that document was all the other ones that we kind of split off into related to signature expiry, key expiry, etc.
Yeah, I think he might have done the thing where he combined like all of the different ones into that PR. I'm just trying to remember how we all resolved that. But yeah, we can bring that up next week and try and just delete the ones that were no longer valid so we don't get confused again.
All right, and I think one related question while I was submitting the PR was, how do we want to, like, I think there needs to be some discussion around the folder structure here, because there's a key management doc and there's a bunch kind of related to it. these were mainly requirements and scoping discussions around the features that we wanted. And there are some recommendations in there. That is one set of docs. And then we have some of the more design oriented, at least we are in high level design around the signature format comparisons, etc. I don't think all of them can just be added at the root level and just make it confusing. There needs to be some structure here. So I think me or Pritesh can suggest some of it. Just want to highlight that like right now we don't have a good structure.
Yeah, this originally was pulled over from the Notary project requirements repo. And so it was a repo that was specifically named requirements, so everything in there was requirement. But now that we've moved it over here, I think it does make sense to sort some things. I noticed it looked like you started putting things in directories in your PRs. I would also throw in one little nitpick in there, which is that we've been naming everything with lowercase and dashes without spaces, so that keep things looking the same might help that way.
Sorry, I didn't get that. Well,
Just the
what
file
would you
names.
prefer?
In some of the PRs, you had like uppercase, camel case stuff with spaces and stuff
Got
like that
it.
in the file names. And here we've just got everything lowercase with dashes.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. That's bike shedding though.
All right. Can we assign these if folks want to take up specific ones? I can look at the attacker goals and also clarify the key management one.
Yeah, I can take a look at the trust policy management. And well, I'll take a look at governance as well, but I think probably most of us should do that just so we all know what's going on there.
I want to have a look at this, the governance one. Okay.
All right, 3 more. Anyone else want to volunteer? I think it's basically just to get more eyes on to make sure this everything is still up to date and everything, right?
Yeah, as in some of these, I think it's fine to just treat them as we had discussions in the HackMD. I think the HackMD are also linked in there. But if there are any unresolved areas, I think this is like, if you can, I think the reviewer should look at areas which are still undefined or need more discussion and highlight them, and any other comments they want to add.
I can do time stepping as well if we need more people.
I can take signature, expiry. Pritesh, will you be able to take signing key expiry?
Yeah, I can take signing key. I can take time stamping also.
All right, this is good.
All right, and I know that I completely missed pointing out last week, and so I just want to make sure that everybody knows, even though I know Marina put her name on the government's review there, just I think it's a useful thing for everybody here to look at. So anybody that wants to be aware of how we want to consider doing some governance and try to get that part of the roadblock out of the way, have a look at that one.
Cool. We have 20 more minutes. We can cover any other topics. I think, Brandon, you mentioned there were some from Slack conversations.
It was the canonicalization of the JSON. So I think we covered that one pretty well.
And Mei-Ling, so since you are sharing the screen, can you open the signature samples from the prototypes? That's the, yeah. So I have implemented a prototype in that in that link, just showing the screen. And I tried the prototype with the JWS one, and output the signature envelope just using the code, so we can clearly see what happens there. And it shows what the signature envelope looks like. You signing by a raw key or signing by a certificate. I mean, key with a certificate.
So this is the raw key example with this payload. And the example with the certificates.
Yes, and although it's just a prototype, obviously it's a prototype without any testing, I actually implement the timestamp part, that is timestamping the cert, and also verify the content, even if the cert is expired. And in that case, a timestamp is also verified.
Sorry, I missed the last bit. Can you repeat that again, Shiva?
So you can go to the code. Yes, just scroll a bit up.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes, this code. Scrolling down and scrolling down a bit. So as you can see here, you can verify content. If the cert is expired, you can verify it against the timestamp.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, this is useful. As in, this is what we wanted to do as a minimal prototype. Show an example of signing and verification with certificate chain, raw key, and timestamping. This is linked in the signature, hack MD2. Shiva, I think you missed the initial part. We talked about the signature format PR. I can ping you on there are some updates to be done there. I can put a comment in the PR.
Okay.
Were there any questions on the prototype?
Not sure about questions just yet. It's just thinking I need to look through this. You do have it over on GitHub though, so I'll pull it up over there.
Yeah. Yeah, if anybody have any other topic to talk about, otherwise we have 15 minutes more. We can close early.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to closing early. People want to have some time to sit back and do some reviews of some of these PRs.
Cool. All right.
Right.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
See you next week.